All right, everybody, we are talking low bar mechanics and how different barbells and specialty bars can influence better mechanics if you struggle with a locked up thoracic spine, if you have a lack of shoulder external range of motion, or if your scapulas don't really want to move the way that they're supposed to, among other things. So Cassie, let's show them what we mean by a bad low bar position. So one of the things that we're going to come back to here is just because you can get into that position does not necessarily mean you should be in that position. So everybody is capable of finding a low bar position, but it's very challenging to do that properly because you have to have exceptionally good thoracic mechanics and shoulder external range of motion. So there's a couple faults that we see immediately with people who have very poor thoracic mobility. The first one is exactly what Cassie's doing. We call that the old man with the walker squat. You ever see like an old guy kind of walking around with a walker, kind of staring at the ground? That's what that looks like. It's a very locked up spine, almost biasing complete global flexion of the spine. And one of the first faults we'll have is elbows excessively elevated, hands super wide because those shoulders can't get into that position. There's a few things that can happen from this now. The first of which is to go into full flexion throughout the squat. We see the spine continue to deform as she squats and find greater amounts of flexion at the bottom. And this is an absolute terrible position to be in if you value your discs. The next thing that we'll see is an overcompensation away from flexion, and that is excessive extension of the spine. So someone who's about to go into flexion will find excessive extension to avoid that through their squat. Go ahead, Cassie. That's the Instagram squat, the one that we see all too often on those influencer pages. A lot of bad things can happen from there. Cassie's probably super uncomfortable here. Yeah. Go ahead and re-rack it, Cassie. We're building bad habits here today. And I'll replace that with a Duffalo bar, Cassie. Now, this is not just a marketing scheme for this barbell, but we are going to talk about how different bars influence better positions. Go and get under this here, Cass. The curvature in a Duffalo bar allows for it requires less shoulder external range of motion, and it requires less thoracic extension in a squat. And because of that, we find that it's far more accommodating for people's elbows, biceps, and shoulders, and they don't get quite as beat up. So as you can see here, now Cassie was capable of doing it properly over there. She's capable of properly doing it here, but this is going to put the hands a little bit lower. And if the hands are a little bit lower, the scapulas and the shoulders don't have to move quite as much. And because they don't have to move as much, she's going to find greater stability in this position. Go ahead and take a good squat here, Cassie. Now, this is not always going to fix some of those same flexion issues and extension issues of the spine that we talked about, but it is going to give you a head start on this section of your body. So it's not going to fix everything that's happening between your rib cage and pelvis, but all of this upper back, connective tissue, musculature, and joints are going to be in a slightly better, I would say, a head start on your mechanics. Go ahead and put that down there, Cassie. The final one that we're going to show you guys here is with the transformer bar. This bar does a lot of things. The thing that we're going to show you, I almost get you. You stuck? Steinborn squat it. Do it like your ancestors did. You think they had squat racks back then?
I almost tripped over this bar.
We have it in the low bar setting here. You don't have to have low bar. You could do this in a high bar. It doesn't matter a ton. The thing that's going to matter is the actual, the way that we're holding the squat. Now, I tend to think that the low bar positioning of this specific setting does help you learn that forward lean in the low bar squat. The forward lean is important because you have to be able to hold this position in a lower bar squat. If you go with a really high bar position and you don't quite have the hips for it, you're going to end up really dumping at the bottom of the squat. Go and get in it, Cassie. Now, this bar is going to require basically zero mobility from the shoulders, the scapulas, and the thoracic spine. So if you have very, very stuck T-spines or shoulders that don't want to move, you experience a lot of bicep pain, it's very easy to get the bulk of your training in an implement that doesn't require those areas to really stabilize hard. I also tend to think that because we don't have the demand of the spine to be really mobile in this position, we can actually learn to brace better. So in this position, we can really maximize our bracing potential. So to kind of take it from the top, that Duffalo bar that we just showed you is going to do a great job of stabilizing and getting you in a better position throughout your shoulder girdle. This bar is not going to necessarily do that as much. It's going to essentially bypass that completely, but you are going to be able to work on those bracing mechanics really, really well here. And show what it looks like, Cassie. Now, if you struggle with low bar patterning, this is definitely the setting to use. If you struggle with that rib cage down cue that we use, and you kind of feel like you're bending over in other squats excessively, this is the bar to teach you how to do that properly. Cassie, we don't want to hurt you today. Go ahead and re-rack that, Cassie, and tell them what you think.
I will say that, just to reinforce what you just mentioned as far as correcting certain spinal positioning, when you're under the transformer bar, that weight is getting placed where a low bar squat should be on your body. So as I squatted down, if I have the tendency to want to arch through my lumbar spine to compensate for a stiff thoracic, that bar's not going to let me, because right as I do that, the weight is already going to start pulling me back. Right? And just as Brandon said, if I'm here and I try squatting, it doesn't really allow me to move in those positions. And
we highly recommend you guys getting these bars because they have tons of applications beyond this, but you should still try to tackle this from a movement intervention standpoint. You should still do your thoracic extension drills, your thoracic uprighting drills. You should still do your shoulder external rotation drills. You should still do your bracing drills and still do your scapular drills, but this is a way to bridge that and allow you to continue to build training volume as well as provide a different stimulus than you would normally have. Brandon and Cassie out.
Wait, I had something to say.
Why did you say it?
I don't know, because
Say it now.
Yeah, still say it.
So what does this mean? What does stability actually mean? So passive and active, we want to be able to control both of those functions. So just because you can get passively into a position doesn't necessarily mean that you are strong to actively maintain those positions. So sure, you may be able to get into the low bar positioning, but what happens right as you start moving? If you start falling into poor movement patterns, then take a step back and really work on developing those movement patterns better to support that range of motion. Don't sacrifice stability for mobility.
Brandon, Cassie out.